Welcome into the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast. We're kind of calling it Five Off the Floor for the time being. I'm Ethan Skolnick. I'm going to be joined today by Alex Toledo. Make sure to check out 5reasonsports.com. It is a totally free website. We didn't have a paywall even before this coronavirus crisis. So you can go to that website, get all your sports news. We've got a ton of Dolphins content that actually, once I get done with this podcast, I got to take a look at before we post, because we've got a lot of stuff coming in. And actually, more people have been going to our website over the last week than ever before. So everybody's bored. We want to provide you with content. It's one of the things we're trying to do on this podcast as well. Also, check out our YouTube channel. Lots of new stuff coming on there this week. Some original shows, personal commentaries. Keep it light at times. And again, try to give you guys some content while we are not posting locker room videos, because there's no locker rooms to cover. Also, we've got new sponsors in the network. And I want to tell you about this because we definitely want to work with the community. We feel we're part of the community. We're by Miami. We're for Miami here. And that's not just Miami, but of course, all of South Florida. So we want to work with local businesses. So we have slashed our ad rates. We're basically now charging less than half of what industry rate is per download. So we want to get you in with us. We want to promote you, and you help us. And we think it's mutually beneficial. And obviously, we've got nothing to do but provide content, and we want to make sure everybody's business gets through this crisis. So one of our new businesses, it's actually someone that I've known for quite a while, does a great job. His name's Alan Levin, and he runs Smarty Pants Marketing, which is a South Florida-based digital marketing agency. Most marketing companies are going to be quick to sell you a tool or a specific marketing service because they don't know how to help you build a strategy. But Smarty Pants Marketing, their goal, Alan's goal, is to develop a complete marketing strategy for every aspect of the customer's buying journey. They've got a 90-day growth accelerator program, which will set your business apart or your personal brand apart from your competition, increase your sales, and provide you a marketing strategy plan that guarantees growth. To find out more, visit www.smartypantsmarketing.com. Now, the pants, there's a Z at the end. It's not an S. So it's SMARTYPANTZ marketing.com, or call, if this is easier, 954 local 406-7160. That's 954-406-7160, or email Allen, that's ALLEN, at smartypants with a Z marketing.com. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back. Alex Toledo is with me. Alphonse Sidney will join us at some point here, maybe in the next day or so. We're going to be pumping out a bunch of shorter episodes. We just want to give you content. If we can fill 20 minutes of your day with some NBA and other conversation, we think we've done our job for that day. So we're going to try to do that as we go forward. So, Alex, this is our task today. We're going to pretend the NBA season is over. I know nobody wants to hear that.
Pretend?
Well, it's not pretending. I think it probably is over. Jamal Murray is currently providing the entertainment. Check out that.
Come on.
Check out that Twitter feed. But or don't. But Bam Adebayo keeps tweeting out different memes. Of how sad he is. It seems like every day some other NBA player is telling you how upset they are. There's no NBA. And we did a couple of episodes on this. I did one with Jeff Zilgett of USA Today, breaking down Adam Silver's comments. And we've talked to Rohan Nadkarni from Sports Illustrated. And we've done our own episode on it and kind of where this is going and what the plan is. And the reality is nobody really knows. I mean, I was out today. I will tell you in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, I'm trying to stay in as much as possible. I had to make one run out for something today. And I can tell you the only things that are open are Publix's, Dollar Trees, and sex shops in Fort Lauderdale. That's it.
Don't forget the pharmacies.
And the pharmacies, which if you go to the sex shop, you might need the pharmacy. I don't know, but that I didn't understand this. I'm driving down Federal Highway. I live in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm right near if you kind of know where the pier is, and not the pier, where the port is, right, where a lot of the cruise ships would typically be leaving from, right here in Fort Lauderdale. I'm right near there. I'm a block south of Las Olas, basically. Mm-hmm. And so my apartment complex sort of spills out onto Federal Highway. And if you go down Federal Highway, it's a ghost town except for the Publix, the Dollar Tree, and the sex shops. That's it. That's all that's open right now.
Yesterday, I actually the days have been so nice recently. I wonder if it's just human pollution just isn't there anymore. Everything's cleared up. But the weather has just been beautiful. And yesterday, I just needed to get out of the house, and I just went and drove around Miami. You got to, I'm somebody who's been working the nightlife shift of Miami for 3 years now. I'm very used to just being out there in the city. I literally just went out there, just went for a drive, enjoy the weather. A lot of people were out there by the water, in the water. People were biking. So I think just to, some of the more people with means who live next to the water over there.
Well,
that's kind of living life a little bit, but everything is closed. People are at least making an effort now.
That's true. I will say, yeah, you're right. I mean, I've seen more people on bicycles than I've ever seen before, which is kind of nice, actually. Like you said, it does seem like there's less pollution. You can get around. It's not like there's really anywhere to go, except although for some reason our governor has not done what other governors have done and shut down beaches, for instance, and what happened at spring break. By the way, I want to address this before we get to and we are going to talk basketball, but you are not a millennial, correct? Could we establish this?
Apparently, Gen Z is 1995 and younger, and I was born February 96, so I'm apparently a Zoomer, as they like to call it.
But this is your fault. Why are the millennials? Because our network is filled with millennials. Like when we came in, there were a lot of Gen Xers. My peers, and a lot of them are not in the network anymore. We've got a few. Josh Darrow's in there. We've got a handful. I think Alex Dono might be Gen X. So we have enough. Okay, I think Alf qualifies as Gen X, right? Because he's late 30s.
He's late millennial, if I remember correctly.
Late millennial. Okay, he's
last of the millennials.
Last of the millennials,
which is crazy.
Right, but so okay, and I'm clearly Gen X. I am not a boomer. Do not call me a boomer. I'm Gen X. All right, I'm 73. But not years old. Year I was born. But the millennials are getting blamed for the shit you people are doing. You realize that? Because we have a lot of millennials in the network, and they're pissed off because every time you see one of these beaches, the millennials. That's not the millennials. Right. So it's not the millennials. These are people who just basically got the right to drink, essentially. They're not millennials.
Let's be fair about the situation. I think the only reason it's come to this point is because of the timing and nothing else, right? Because the U.S. has been so far behind, like Italy and South Korea, I don't even remember, whatever. They went through it earlier, right? We're going through it later, and we're going through it right now as spring break is happening. People are coming over here. They have trips planned for months and months and months. They're like 20 years old coming over here from Michigan or wherever the hell to come out here, be in the weather and drink and get crazy drunk with their friends. And it's like, I almost can't blame them. And I do blame them. They're
No, you can blame them. Alex, come on.
Yes, I am blaming them. I'm just saying that it's just terrible timing at the same time. These people are already here as all of this started really turning serious. So
right, but the flights were not okay. The airlines had not been shut down. They could have gotten.
That's what I'm saying. It's a product of the whole country kind of just being delayed on their reaction to it and not really shutting shit down, wanting to keep everything as business as usual.
No, I understand, but
the people are to blame, but the system.
You know my thoughts on the system and the president, so I'm not going to do that here.
And it's not even a political thing.
I know that. But I said that on Light Skinned Opinions, but this is not about. My point is, stuff wasn't shut down yet. They could have gone home. They stayed here to infect us, essentially, your generation. And so I sound like the old man barking at cloud right now. But
here, all that money was already put in. It's expensive, man, to go and rent out a place in Miami Beach or downtown.
That doesn't mean you need to kill us.
That's years old. They're kids. Blaming it on them, just kind of. They're absolutely doing bad, but it doesn't feel like they're the brunt of the problem here. You could also, there's been plenty of there's been plenty of boomers out there. Just kind of I know plenty of people in Miami that are older just kind of are not really taking it seriously, man.
Well, there's a different reason for that.
Or they weren't.
No, they weren't. There's two reasons. Okay, so there's your generation. See, this is why, to me, I'm going to exclude my generation, Gen X, and the millennials from a lot of, and Gen Y, I guess, from a lot of the fault here. I'm not saying all of it, obviously. Okay, you can't make a blanket statement, but I'm gonna sort of move them all to the side because to me, the most at fault parties are your generation and the boomers. And your generation is because all you don't give a fuck, okay, which is fine. I was the same when I was that age. All right, but the second, and now I become that again later in life, as you can tell. But then, and the boomers' problem is they voted for Trump. So to me, and they watch Fox News, and so when you're talking about them not taking it seriously, it's because he didn't take it seriously because he wanted to get reelected and didn't want the case numbers to go up and didn't plan, and that's one of the reasons we are where we are. And now he's blaming China for everything so that he has a scapegoat again. But those are two totally different reasons why people did not take it seriously. So I agree with you. The two most at fault generations are your generation and old man yelling at cloud. Those two generations, old man yelling at Fox News, Sean Hannity.
Even then, I'm kind of not even with the whole thing of like blaming a generation on this. I think this is such a weird, like unprecedented problem, and just everybody from every industry has kind of like taken too long to shut everything down, right? And the fact that it was never mandated, like just trying to get the problem solved, getting everybody in a quick little national lockdown for 2 weeks. All of this is taking forever to happen, and right, like this is a great.
Well, I'm looking at our thread. We have this thread here, our kids table thread on 5 Reasons Sports DMs accounts. I mean, we have 50 people on each of these threads. Okay, this goes on all day long. Like we're not out of business, right? I mean, we were never in business, but we're not out of business. So CK, our friend from 3 Yards Per Carry, Chris Kaufman, CK Parrott, just tweeted out the latest update. 13,958 new cases and 94 new deaths in the United States. So that's the latest update.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's real positive. We're going to talk about another sponsor. Then we're going to get to the Heat stuff. I want to tell you about the Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. You want to sue the millennials? You want to sue Gen Z? Call the Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm, or better yet, check out the website, onecalllegal.com. That's onecalllegal.com. They handle just about any kind of case, whether it's immigration, accident, slip and fall, just about anything. Again, they gotten a couple of my driving tickets tossed out, and they've got great people there, and they are working. They're working remotely right now. If you call down to the office, go to onecalllegal.com is actually the best way to start this, and you'll find everything you need there, all the numbers, all the email addresses, everything, and they have somebody working remote who can help start your case. And when they come back to the office, which will be eventually, we'll be working down there too, hopefully, if this thing ever ends, they're right there in North Miami, right off the Golden Glades, or right before the Golden Glades, right off of I-95. So it's a Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm, onecalllegal.com. All right, I'm going to stop blaming you. Let's get to basketball. If the Heat season is over, we're going to do this. The five things that are most upsetting about that. And again, this doesn't compare to what's going on in the world, okay? But just from a strictly, not NBA, but strictly a Miami Heat perspective, if this season is over, the 5 things that are most upsetting, I will start, okay? Number 1 to me is I just wanted to see these kids in a playoff atmosphere.
Yep.
To me, right? That's what this season became about. Was once you knew he was coming back, could Tyler Hero, could Kendrick Nunn, could Duncan Robinson, and to a certain degree, could Bam Adebayo, because there's a bigger step that needed to happen there. Could they maintain their level of play in the postseason? It's not necessarily about elevating your level of play, although we obviously saw Dwayne Wade do that early in his career. But it's just about, can you maintain it? Can you go through, the ups and downs? And people forget, like I always talk about this, that check out Dwayne's stats in his first ever playoff game. I think he shot 3 of 16 from the field. All anybody remembers about that series is the late 3 he made in one game against New Orleans, and then the runner in the lane to win game 1, the first one. Not game 1, I'm sorry, game 7, right? That's all anybody remembers. They don't remember him struggling because he got through it. He pushed through it, and then he played even better at times in the Indiana series, which was a second-round series. And everybody remembers the Jermaine O'Neal dunk that he had in that one. So to me, that is the shame of this, is we saw Kendrick Nunn struggle at times and then improve his play after that. We've seen Duncan Robinson make himself invaluable as the season has gone on. We saw Tyler Hero play big in those big moments. We've seen Bam Adebayo take the step to All-Star. I wanted to see if it could be sustained. If there's no playoffs, we're not going to see it.
Yeah, that's I 100% agree with you. That was my first thing too. I really wanted to see, it's very important, like you said, for the young guys to get those playoff reps. I think getting them in that simulation of that environment was going to be helpful going forward. I think it was going to be, a lot of what their sales pitch going forward hinges on those guys, right? And being able to surround Jimmy with that whole young core, Bam, Hero, Duncan, Nunn, etc. And just their shooting. You wanted to see the shooting in the playoffs. You wanted to see how it played out, right? And you wanted to be able to sell yourself to these other free agents yeah, look what we've got going on here. And then, like, that's a shame, right? Like, we wanted to see what this team looked like in the playoffs, and it was going to be beneficial for everybody involved. And maybe we still do get the playoffs, right? But
we might, but we're assuming right now we don't. So that's the thing. Like, we might, and hopefully we do. And that's why I said, like, there should be no complaints. If the NBA comes back this season in any capacity, with fans, without fans, with the regular season, not with the regular season. By the way, I know we do this on the show sometimes, but I need to call out ESPN. Not that they saw our thing, because, of course, we're just piddly little 5 Reasons Sports Network. But you saw what Stephen A. reported on First Take this week? Did you see it?
What are you referring to?
That the NBA had plans to salvage the regular season with a few games because they needed to satisfy TV requirements.
Oh, of course. I'm not surprised at that at all. Like, they want money.
No, but are you surprised that I reported that on Twitter, on the pod, and on video a week before Stephen A. did? Are we?
Oh, no, I mean.
Yeah. Anyway. Not that Stephen A. saw it, but I'm just saying we've known that. If you've been listening to 5 on the Floor, you've known that. They need to play a certain number of regular season games to satisfy TV. So they will come back with some kind of a regular season. It's not going to be up to 82, but I think they'll get up to 70, again, if there are games. But we're assuming now there's nothing happening. All right, so that's number one, the young players. To you, number 2 is?
Well, to me, number 2 is absolutely, like, if I had to put it individual, Bam, right? I wanted to see Bam in the playoffs. I was very excited to see what he would look like when the game slows down. And again, in that environment, I wanted to see what type of player he becomes, because I think that's what ends up separating, make the All-Star from guys who are in that upper on the player. Right? And a lot of what makes him so good, besides everything that I wanted to see how his playmaking would look in the playoffs, I wanted to see how his scoring would look in the playoffs. Like, I already trust his defense to be elite, right? I wanted to see how the mid-range shot held up in the playoffs. Just, like, how much could he really, like, make the right decisions at the right times. I was very excited to see what Bam looked like in the playoffs.
Yeah, me too. And there's a difference between, we've talked about it, between a starter and a star and between a star and a superstar. And I think Bam made the first jump, and the playoffs is where you start to make the second jump. And as I said, it is the same as it was with Dwayne or with any of these other guys. There's a progression that players go through. I remember when Dame Lillard went through it. Okay, when a guy is becoming an all-star, it's in the playoffs that they start to make that statement. And I do think the playoff basketball is perfectly suited for him. This idea of being able to switch on everybody. He creates matchup issues for everyone on the defensive end. And then offensively, I think he was going to be put in a position where he had to do some things he's not as comfortable doing. And I think that's where the breakthrough for him is going to come. We saw it in and we've talked about the jumper, but we saw it in the game that Jimmy went out. I can't remember who they played, where they squandered that big lead, but it was a Washington, right before the break here. And Bam was the only guy left on the court. And it's like, oh shit, I got to do this. That's, I think, a position he might have been in at certain times in the postseason. And so I wanted to see it also. All right, number 3 here. I'm going to go with this one. I wanted to see what a Jimmy-led team looked like in the postseason, because when I've talked to people around him, they're like, stop worrying about – now, we can argue whether this is right or not, but they kept saying, stop worrying about the shooting, stop worrying about the day-to-day with him. Give Jimmy 2 weeks to really dissect an opponent. Use his intelligence and his competitiveness to dissect an opponent in the playoffs. You're going to get the best Jimmy. And we saw that last year. We saw that in the postseason, where there was no question who the Sixers' best player was. It wasn't Simmons. It wasn't Embiid. It was Jimmy. I think there was another level of Jimmy. I know we talked about the concerns with Jimmy, about what happens when teams weren't fouling him as much, and so he was going to have to rely on the jumper. But I just think he would have found a way. And I think in some ways he would have dragged this team along with him. And the idea of him kind of being an underdog still, like if they'd gotten through a first-round series, for obviously Philly, he would have been jacked up. But like if they got through a first-round series against Indiana, which, by the way, not a huge fan of T.J. Warren, so that would have been fun. And then make him an underdog against Giannis's team in the second round and see how that looks, because – I think that's something he would have really sort of taken hold of, that responsibility. So I'm disappointed. If it doesn't happen, I'm disappointed. We don't get to see what the playoffs look with Jimmy. And I also think, we can talk about how Bam has surpassed him in some ways as the Heat's most important player, and Jimmy has said that too. But ultimately, look, Jimmy was the star that turned this thing around by coming down here. And we've talked about, can he be a co-lead star with someone or with a couple other players? We were going to see that in the postseason. We're also going to see what he could not provide. So you would have to see what kind of a player do they need. Do they need a Giannis? I mean, everybody needs a Giannis. But do they really need a Bradley Beal? Do they need a Drew Holiday? Do they need a Victor Oladipo? Do they need a Kyle Lowry, who I know Jimmy's a big fan of? Like, what kind of a player do they need with him? We're going to find that out in the postseason.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right about Jimmy, right? Like, even if we can make the argument that maybe Bam has surpassed him in just general impact on the floor, I don't think Bam gets to the level that he's at right now, like this rapidly, without Jimmy there doing everything he does. And it's not just to say, like, yes, obviously the team is way worse when you subtract Jimmy, but it's like, I don't think a lot of other guys who just, who can score and play make like Jimmy are just making Bam get to this level. I think they, the fact that they're both like just natural defenders, natural underdogs, not the same background, but as far as basketball players, they've both been underdogs all their life. I think they're both great two-way guys, like I said, and they've both been extremely beneficial towards each other, I think. And the thing also with like Jimmy in the playoffs, man, like you said, we saw it last year, even in a team that really made no sense on the floor basketball-wise sometimes, but, having Butler, Simmons, and Embiid out there, still almost beat the Raptors. Took him to the last shot in Game 7 on a team that ended up winning the title, and that I think is going to end up being underrated in NBA history, that Raptors team. But that's how good the Sixers were with their defense, and Jimmy was just on offense, because it was like Embiid was so up and down all series. I think Jimmy was the calming force, and I think that was going to be the overriding theme in this playoffs too. I think the doubts with him from us really mostly came from like having to kind of carry the team offensively, because the rest of the team is kind of unproven on that end. A lot of rookies and a lot of guys who maybe can't do it like that anymore, like Goran, as far as creating for themselves offensively. So I think it had less to do with Jimmy. I think we know that Jimmy is not in that LeBron, KD level. I think it has more to do with the rest of the roster not having another creator like that, and less about Jimmy. We know that Jimmy's going to give you in the playoffs, and he's going to be very, very good for you.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. And I think the other thing that would have really benefited Jimmy is, and I think it's one of the reasons he was so effective in the playoffs last year, is because you got more time in the playoffs. You have more days off in between. Now, I don't know that if they play the playoffs now, I don't think that's the case. So they're going to have to compress it. But what you typically would have been the 2 weeks for the first round. I mean, you're talking sometimes 2 full days off without a game. It's a totally different experience. And so I think he would have been really well positioned. Now, again, would he have proven he's a true number one on a championship contender? No, probably not. But I think what he would have proven was he's definitely part of that top end ensemble that you want on a team. And I think he would have pushed Bam to get to his level. So that's unfortunate. What do you have for number 4?
Honestly, for number 4, man, I will have to go again with the individual stuff with Duncan Robinson. I was already so sure, and this is a guy who's basically in his rookie season in the NBA, right? Like, he played last year very sparingly, and was just not a good shooter in the NBA last year. We knew he could shoot, and that it really wasn't that he was a bad shooter, but he's made this turn this year into probably the best shooter in the NBA this year, with Curry and Thompson out all season. And I was already so sure that it wasn't going to fall off in the playoffs, even if it were to fall off like 3, 4, or 5 percentage points. I think Duncan Robinson is going to be a weapon for years to come, with, that skill that he has already of coming off handoffs and screens and just being able to fire at will, no wasted motion, like JJ Redick said. And basically, like, Duncan Robinson is an elite level weapon at this point already, I think, because of how he can leverage his shooting, the different ways he can get to a shot. And I really wanted to see how it looked in the playoffs. Like, it's been a while since the Heat have had a weapon like that. And Wayne Ellington was the last one, but Wayne Ellington didn't do what he did with the Heat in his first season in the NBA, basically. Mm-hmm. And this guy is also like the size of a wing, as opposed to Wayne Ellington, who was older and smaller. So I was excited to see what Duncan looked like, just firing those. Like, he was going to win you games by himself. When he has like the ability to put up 7 3-pointers in a game as frequently as he does, like, he's going to win you games by himself.
But the issue with it was, and the other reason I wanted to see it was because You mentioned Wayne Ellington, right? Wayne Ellington became unplayable for them in the playoffs, and that was my question: was Duncan Robinson going to be playable? Now, there's some metrics you can look at, and our friend Simon Sperling, well, it goes by Simon Smith on Twitter, has put out a bunch of stuff about. He's like a Duncan Robinson encyclopedia, and he's put out a bunch of stuff about how Duncan was actually playing at a very high level defensively. I think the eye test would tell you something different. And how is he going to get officiated in the playoffs also? That was the other question. So I think in a lot of ways it was going to be sort of an early career referendum on him. Like, is he a nice ensemble piece, or is he like a core frontline piece for you? And I think the playoffs were going to determine that in a lot of ways. All right, for number 5, we're going to have to split this because there's 2 we haven't mentioned, and I'm surprised neither of us has gotten to them. I think, well, because you and I kind of covered the young guys a bunch. But the 2 things I wanted to get to, I mean, one is more sentimental, and the other one is more transactional. All right.
Okay.
The transaction.
I already know what they'll go for, just from what
right. I mean, the transactional is like, are they going to regret the Justice Winslow trade now? Because they never got to see what it looked like. Now, I mean, with Iguodala and Crowder, and I think some of that depends on whether Crowder resigns. And he said on our podcast, they told Barry Jackson he wants to resign. And but we've done a whole other podcast about how they make that work and using the bird rights and everything else. But there were really 2 goals to that trade. I mean, well, there are 3 goals. One was, and this wasn't the primary, but to send Justice to a place he was going to be happier, because he wasn't happy. That was one thing. We can't look past that, right? If he wasn't happy, it's kind of like the Minkah Fitzpatrick thing. Like, everybody talks about Minkah Fitzpatrick and what he did in Pittsburgh, and I hated the Dolphins trade of Minkah Fitzpatrick. Hated it. Okay, to me, you make him try to fit in the system. And Minkah's since proven that it really wasn't about him not wanting to play other positions. He just didn't want to go through a rebuild. So I would have held on to Minkah Fitzpatrick. But the point is, and a lot of Dolphin fans said, well, if he didn't want to be here, he didn't want to be here. Well, Justice had become that. Okay, behind the scenes, he'd become that. They just didn't feel he wanted to be here. And they felt in some of his comments afterwards on Twitter that they were kind of justified because Justice is not a bad guy, but like, it's just, he was not happy here, right? So, so basically, that's kind of
what Iguodala and Crowder look like.
Right. You want to see what they look like, and they just gave Iguodala $15 million for next year. And so, I know they had to do it to make the deal work, but I mean, you'd rather Jay Crowder have that money, to be honest, or at least most of it.
Okay, so I had a feeling the other thing you were going to say was maybe about Udonis Haslem?
Yes. So that's the other one. So the first one is, are you going to regret Are you going to regret the trade because you're going to say you should have just held on? Now, again, nobody can knew that a global pandemic that the government wasn't going to be prepared for was coming, right? Like, how do you know that? It's like this guy Jim Nagy, or CK Parrott, again, kind of pissed off because Nagy runs the Senior Bowl, and he was tweeting about how all these NFL players should have gone to all the combine stuff and everything else because the personal workouts are never going to happen. And I'm like, this isn't a snowstorm. Like, this isn't like something you could have expected. Like, okay, there's something that happens, okay? Or, I mean, this is a global pandemic that's never happened before, okay? At least since 1918, all right? We're going on 100 years. So I'm never going to blame the Heat for making a trade that didn't end up working out, because it was reliant upon what you were going to get from the playoffs. But I think it's disappointing. The other thing is UD. The sentimental thing is UD. Like, he may play again for another season, and Heat fans are going to be irritated about that, like our Nikias Duncan and like Harry and others who are like, why are you giving him a roster spot? But I at least wanted him to have one more baseline jumper attempt or one more time to get cheered by the fans when he got on the floor.
Yeah, I would kill for another UD dunk.
Right, one more, right? Like, one more, like something.
And then he just does like hangs off the rim or something in the game, something like that.
So, I mean, that's,
okay. I just thought of another maybe unintended consequence here from everything happening that might really affect the Heat and their plans. So maybe the even bigger reason they made that trade, other than getting two playoff defensive bodies with, playoff experience, was the cap flexibility this summer. That was the biggest difference, right? They're going to have even more cap space in 2021, but more than that, they're going to have a ton of room, or at least a lot more room this summer that they weren't supposed to have any. All of a sudden, when is free agency going to happen, right? Like, so Anthony Davis is going to be a free agent. They didn't finish the season with the Lakers. They could have been, maybe the favorites. you also talk about Giannis is only going to have 1 year now. If let's say everything gets canceled, he's only going to have 1 year now.
Well, that affects the Heat in a positive way. Well, I think the AD thing affects the Heat in a negative way because AD is not leaving the Lakers. The other negative business.
The other negative with this summer, that like Anthony Davis is this summer. The other negative is that since we don't know when free agency would happen, would they be able to even like do anything with that money that they opened up? What's going to happen with the guys?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're missing the biggest thing is the money. Like the money. I mean, the salary cap is gonna tank. It already took the hit from the China stuff, the other China stuff with the comments that Daryl Morey made and all the losses in China that they've taken. But now you have this. I mean, we've talked about 25% or more of the NBA's revenue comes from the playoffs, and that doesn't even include the last quarter of the regular season. You're talking about 35%, maybe 40% of NBA revenue was just eliminated potentially.
So that money, like that comes from, that money that you're referring to now. So you think that the hit that they're going to take from potentially not airing the playoffs is going to affect the cap right away? Or do you think that's something that's already been like, I'm asking because out of curiosity, because I think,
I have to look at when they negotiated. I have to look at when they set this. Okay. And maybe it doesn't hit for one more year. We should take a look at it and have an answer on the next pod. I'll take a look at when they set this, but if it's set now, it can't be good. I mean, there's no revenue coming in. I think the positives, like you said, I think the only positive may be that the Bucks are going to turn into the 1994 Montreal Expos and never win a championship that they could have won. And so I do think that potentially affects Giannis, although he may feel even that one more year, if he does have one more year, is not enough time to Milwaukee, and it might make him more. Plus, he's going to be living up there. He's going to be seeing, or I guess he lives there part of the time, but he's going to be seeing kind of what people are going through. He's not going to want to leave the community. I mean, this from a sentimental perspective is going to change a lot of stuff. You mentioned AD. There's no way AD leaves LA now. If they don't finish this season, like he's going to leave after not playing a playoff series with LeBron.
And they were on so much like great momentum too. Like
that's not happening.
On the up and up there.
No, I think people say there's going to be more change. I actually think there'll be less player movement. I think a lot of these players are going to feel sort of, particularly if they have owners who did the right thing. And I think that they're going to feel more indebted to their communities. And I think that they're going to stay. I don't think that's where we're headed. I think we're headed towards a place where a lot of things that we thought were going to happen are going to be put on hold. And that's the thing. And this is not just the Heat organization that's affected by this. But the Heat organization has been affected by this more than most over the years, whether it was the Bosch thing or the Zoe thing, where you can plan. I think Riley's talked about that. You can plan and plan and plan and plan and plan, right? Andy's talked about this too. But like then things happen that you just don't anticipate. Now this one happens to affect everybody, okay? But the Heat have had some things that have just affected them. And you can't anticipate when Riley goes out into and rips up the late 90s team finally, okay, after losing the Knicks 3 straight years and rips them up, okay. PJ and Mash go. He brings in Eddie Jones and Mason and Brian Grant, and he puts a new team around Hardaway and Mourning, and then we're at FAU one day for training camp in October, and Zoe's not there because he took a physical when he came back from the Olympics. Like, that affects everything. Or when you make a trade for Goran Dragic to get the piece that's going to get you sort of back in contention after LeBron leaves, and which was another unexpected thing, although for that one they're somewhat to blame, but for this one they weren't. Chris Bosh the exact same day gets sick, right? Like, this is stuff you can plan and plan and plan. And so the good organizations like the Heat have the ability to get up after this stuff. But there's probably stuff on the spreadsheets, all right, between Adam and Andy and Nick and Pat and Chet and Eric and everybody else in the organization and Mickey and Shane and how many people they have? Zoe. Okay, their whole front office, right? Mm-hmm. And Keith Askins, everybody else. And there's probably stuff on those spreadsheets that has been thrown out. It's just not going to happen. Like, and now there may be other things that materialize, but there are things that are definitely going to get thrown out. And I think so. I want to throw this out to fans. We've talked about having a fan segment on here. By the way, I have an allergy. Okay, I'm not sick. I have to say this all the time because if people listen to the podcast, they know something's like.
Have you gotten any better? Like, have you refined your skills at like the subtleties with the cough?
I'm trying.
Like, I found myself getting better, like not touching my face, like just naturally from having to do it.
I do that all the time. When I was on SVN TV a week and a half ago, and people were telling me, they were texting me while they were watching the segment because I taped it earlier. Said you're touching your face. I do that all the time. I got to stop that. But so we got this new segment called You've Got the Floor. And so this is for fans. So we're going to do this here, okay? This is two-pronged, all right? You got to do two things. You've got to go to our store, which is 5reasonsports.com. Use the code MISSSPORTS. There's 3 S's in the middle. MISSSPORTS5. Buy a Heat shirt, which is 15% off with that code. So you get a reasonable price. It'll be to you within a week, all right? Once you get the shirt, tag us on social media, all right? And the first person to tag us with a new shirt, and I'll know, by the way, because we see who orders them. The first person to tag us with a new shirt can come on the next show and say the thing that they're going to they can spend some time with us on an upcoming podcast telling us the thing they'll miss most or the biggest regret about the Heat season being put off, all right? So we got the rules on that? We clear on that? All right, so that's what we're going to do. 5reasonsports.com, MISSSPORTS5, buy a Heat t-shirt, tag us on Twitter, and the first one to do that can appear on the show. All right? Other than that, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks to all of our new sponsors. We're going to start introducing you to them on future episodes. Like I said, check out Smarty Pants Marketing, a Z at the end of that, smartypantsmarketing.com. When we come out of this thing, everybody's going to need to get their business name out. So why not start it now? Let people know you're still in business, right? You definitely want to work with somebody who has skills in the digital area, whether it's us or, again, whether it's one of our sponsors who specializes in that. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.